as always, but as always, welcome to the Freedom Cage podcast, where we lock into a free state of mind each and every pay week on all DSPs, of course. And to my right, I got my main guy, my ace, my left, my right this week, Shawn, better known as Mr. Signaline, on all your socials.
You know.
And me, I'm Kenny Man, knows King Capnick on all those socials. But it's April, it's the top of the month, it's Autism Awareness. Shawn, man, take us through.
Yes, man. So, I mean, we here at FCP, we like to talk about the things that most people don't like to address. Hence the title of this episode, We Don't Talk About Autism Enough. But before we get into that, I think it would just be good to give everyone a quick overview of exactly what autism is. So, this autism definition is via CDC, it's the Center for Disease and Control website. Autism or autism spectrum disorder, ASD, refers to a broad range of conditions characterized by challenges with social skills, repetitive behaviors, speech, and nonverbal communication. Now, according to the Centers for Disease and Control, autism affects an estimated 1 in 44 children in the United States today. They also label that there are 5 major types of autism, which includes Asperger's syndrome, Rett syndrome, childhood disintegrative disorder, Kanner syndrome, and pervasive developmental disorder. But aside from Google, or as a friend of mine, that's a coder likes to call it, Dr. G, we like to have candid conversations here at FCP with people who are either doing the work to provide services or maybe parents or maybe a part of the autism community to bring their experience, their knowledge to this platform so that we can have a candid discussion to bring awareness to autism, as this is going to be Autism Awareness Month when this episode drops. And with that, I'm going to introduce our first guest. She is Shemika Paul. She is a phenomenal autism mom. She is also an investigator at the NYPD, licensed life insurance agent, and notary. Welcome, Shemika. How you feeling?
I'm good. How are you?
I'm good. I'm good. We are so happy to have you here. Thank you for giving us your time. And then also, I have to introduce Charles Robinson. He is a pediatric cognitive therapist supporting the full spectrum of services around those who are diagnosed with autism. Charles, how you feeling, brother?
Gentlemen, I'm sorry. Gentlemen, it is my honor to be with you this evening. Thank you for inviting me. Thank you.
Definitely, definitely. And listen, it's our pleasure. It is our pleasure to have you here. So before we get any deeper into this conversation, Shamika, I'm going to start with you. Did you know anything about autism before you gave birth to Maverick?
Yes, I did know a little bit about it, but not too. It was kind of vague because I was a child child protective service specialist with ACS for a little while. Then I went to foster care, so that was my background. I did that for about 15 years, so I had a little inkling of what it was. So I knew what to look for, but I didn't know exactly what it was until I was able to care for my son.
What about you, Charles?
Well, I actually, I would, I didn't have a formal working clinical knowledge of what autism was when I was first introduced, when it was first introduced to me in my life, which was back in the late '60s, early '70s. When, to be quite frank, I mean, I want to just keep it above board with your listeners. I mean, I was that little black boy that couldn't stay still in school. I couldn't stay still. I wasn't focused. I was weird, and all of the social markers for what we now call autism or autism spectrum disorder. Though that was those were the symptoms, if you will, that I exhibited back in the late '60s, early '70s, when there were no diagnosis, there was no label for it. It was just that bad little boy that couldn't keep still and called the troublemaker in the classroom. So that's actually my first exposure to what we now recognize as autism spectrum disorder.
And Charles, I like that you put it that way because, and I know Kenny, you can relate to this. In schools, there was always that other section of the school. They always labeled them with some sort of name. I know in my junior high school, they were called a resource group. They started school a little later than us. They got out a little earlier than us because they had behavioral issues, and no one ever really gave them the time of day or the awareness. But you could just tell that there was something different going on. And Shemika, I'm going to come back to you. When you first started to see those signs and symptoms, what really triggered you to really start to do more research?
Well, when I started doing more, my son was around, I will say, 20 months. He started talking. He said his first words at 8 months, which was "mama." Then he started talking around maybe 15 to 18 months. Around 20 months, it stopped, but he was still saying "mama." I noticed that he was looking at his hands, flaring. I said, you know what? I think he's delayed. I'm thinking of autism, but I'm like, you know what? I'm not going to jump the gun. I'm going to get him some services. I really don't want to label my son because he's a Black young boy. They're going to start labeling him. They're going to want to put him on medication. I don't want that. So I said, you know what? Let me get him the services first. So around, I will say he started getting services maybe like around 25, 26 months. He was 2. He started like repetitive behaviors. He'll start lining things up on the couch. He'll start circling around. He'll start moving back and forth to the window. I said, you know what? Something's wrong. My family, oh, he's a kid. He'll grow out of it. I'm from a West Indian background. You can't grow out of autism, but I didn't really diagnose it as that. So what happened was when I knew that he was soon going to go to school at 3, I said, you know what? Let me stop being in denial. I know something's wrong. So I had him evaluated, and he was on the autism spectrum on the lower end. They said they really couldn't fully diagnose him as like the stage exactly because he was very inconsistent in his movements, but he will always use stemming words, mama, eat, but he still wasn't talking. Till this day, he doesn't talk. So I said, you know what, let me get him diagnosed. His father took it as a man. You know how that goes. Oh, it's all in your head. Oh, he got that from your side.
Wow.
I don't know what side that is because yes, I was delayed growing up. I was, but I was delayed in the fact that I didn't learn how to read till I was 7. But as of today, I hold a master's degree. So, so you could say all that to say that I came far and I was in honors class my whole time. I see some strengths in my son, but I also see the weaknesses where he cannot speak. That doesn't mean he's not intelligent. And I tend to tell people that, and people will say people are very ignorant. They'll say, well, he doesn't look autistic. Autism doesn't have a look. And I keep telling people that he's a regular child. He's going to be 5 years old. He does everything that normal kids do. He's just nonverbal, and he might do a little stemming. He might do repetitive behaviors. He might like a certain toy as other kids. My son does have eye contact. My son do make chewing noises, like cooing noises. He will touch you. He will. So that's where it's a little lost for him because now he's getting older. They're saying, oh, he's autistic, but he has good eye contact. He understands well. Is it really what it is? But the verbal, he still doesn't have the verbal. He will say words here and there, but they say he knows more than what he does, but I really don't know because he doesn't want to do anything with me. He is glued to the iPad. They say that's not good. I try my best to do that, but I'm a working mother. I'm working 50 hours sometime a week. I'm tired. I'm trying to potty train him. His father's around, but really, I'm really doing everything. I have his grandmother, and I have my brother, but I'm the one that's really doing everything for him. I'm the one in meetings every week. I'm the one, speaking to the teachers. I'm trying to get him a good placement for kindergarten. And the thing is, they don't make it easy for parents at all. It's very stressful. It took me a long time to get speech for him. I had to write to the Congresswoman. Now, say if there's someone whose first language isn't English, that's very challenging. They will give up. Now I'm in the process of getting OPWDD for my son. I make a good salary, so I know I'm not going to get any money when it comes to, so,
So,
but
Shemika, I just want to slow you down real quick. Can you tell the people what that means?
oh, office with people with developmental disabilities.
Okay,
Because
perfect. Thank you.
I would like a little bit more services. I would like respite services, which means where I could go get my nails and my feet done and someone watching. I would like to. I don't really have any time for myself. The time I have for myself is when he go to sleep, and I'm usually tired, so I got to go to sleep.
Right.
But I really have no time for myself. Yeah, I wouldn't change my life because I love my son, but still, I feel that he needs more services, and it's hard to get services, especially in New York City. We're overpopulated. The schools are overpopulated. Now we got migrants coming in. That's a whole nother issue.
Mm,
So everything, the services, the teachers are underpaid, so they don't want to work.
right.
They want to do everything through Zoom. My son is not going to learn through Zoom. He is not. He's a person who likes to touch. He likes to look at your lips. He likes to do things. And I feel that my son, if he had all the services, in a more duration, I think he'll be further than what he is.
I agree. And listen, first of all, I respect the hell out of you for everything that you did to make sure that your son got the services. I can definitely identify. I think all of our listeners know that my son was diagnosed with autism when he was
Mhm.
1, and my wife was like, she was out there on everybody, on everything, making sure that he got everything that he needed. But it was not easy. There was a lot of
Mhm.
loopholes that we had to go through. So I can definitely identify with you on that. I think what I hear a lot of people here is when they first go to that pediatrician, especially if it's somebody who's BIPOC, right? Black, indigenous, or people of color, the first thing they
Mhm.
want to tell you is, oh, he's going to be fine. It's just normal. And we have to get away from that, where we need to give ourselves the full workup like any other doctor in any other rural area would give any other kid. So I
Mhm.
definitely identify with you on that. Now, Charles, flipping it over to you on the professional side of this, and you're hearing Shemika's story about the struggle for services. When you first got into this work, what did you see when you started encountering children?
Well, I have to go a little further back because I actually started my career in education and therapy and working with children as, let me get the title correct, a substitute crisis management paraprofessional. So I came in from the corporate world, and I know this sounds like a bunch of romantic nonsense, but I saw a film called To Spill of Love, and I said, I love Sidney Poitier. I loved his role in that film, and I said, let me take a day off and go and work with some kids. And I'll never forget. I think we talked about it during the when the two of us first met.
Mhm.
Uh, I went through the process of becoming a paraprofessional, and I worked with a child, and all we did, we did some work, and we were out on the playground playing. And at the end of the school day, I got approached by so many teachers. How did you do it? He never talks to anybody. I've never seen him pick up a pencil. I've never seen him sit in class. He's usually throwing chairs. He's usually harassing other kids. You had him to sit down. He was working. He played with you. How did you do it? I had no idea how to answer that question. I just had that energy and that rapport with the child, and and I said, my great grandmother used to tell me, if you have a gift that you don't share, that's that's not good. So I didn't even see it as a gift. I just thought that, I took to heart what these people were telling me. I said, man, let me explore it a little bit more. I have a pretty flexible job. I can go back to school. I can learn how to do this, and maybe I could duplicate those same results with other kids. So I started off I started off that way. Then I taught second grade, fifth grade. I even taught high school. I was a dean for a little while. And what I noticed was that, to Miss Shamika's point, there were a lot of children who had delays, but these delays weren't diagnosed because there were a lot of parents who, like Miss Shamika was speaking earlier of, yeah, ain't nothing wrong with that boy, ain't nothing wrong with that girl. She'll grow out of it. It'll be okay. And imagine, we're dealing with relatively young people that are under 3 and under with autism spectrum disorder. Imagine someone as tall as one of you guys in the fifth grade with these kinds of exhibiting these behaviors and these behavioral markers that who haven't had the benefit of early intervention.
Mhm.
And the intervention comes in fifth grade and sixth grade. And it's just a dreadful dynamic for children who don't get the help that they need early on. So I applaud everyone, especially Miss Shamika, who you had the foresight, and you were really kind of ice skating uphill because you had all of these forces against you. The
Mhm.
cultural biases. Um, he'll grow out of it. The culture, um, not wanting your child to be labeled. All of these impediments to these young people not getting early intervention. And Miss Shamika, and you guys, you had the courage to overcome those obstacles and break through those barriers. But every child that you see that's 13, 14 years old, still having these behavioral issues, these social deficits, represents a mother and or a father who
Hmm.
did not have the courage to break through those barriers and to overcome those obstacles. So that was my median exposure, my professional exposure, experiencing the uh, the trials and tribulations of these young people that were in almost in their teens, who had not been diagnosed, who didn't get early intervention.
Right.
So
I gotta
I now see
not to interject for you, Charles. But sorry, I don't. It's a really good story. Once you were coming across kids who were diagnosed, how important was it to see parents being involved with those services that the child was receiving at the time?
well, very important, very crucially important, because in my own practice as a pediatric cognitive therapist, it is absolutely crucial that from a clinical point of view, uh, I develop a rapport with the learner, right? It is equally important for me as a therapist to develop a rapport with the family, because there has to be a certain level of trust that is fostered before I can do the things that need to be done from a clinical point of view. So to answer your question, it is crucially important that trust is built, that rapport and trust are built, so that the parents will feel comfortable and they will be receptive to my recommendations and the things that we need to do, that I know, based on my practice and based on my experience and based on the patterns,
Mhm.
will get their child from this level to the next.
Understood. Understood.
Yeah, and that's very important because especially what I found, and Shamika, you probably could relate, was that watching the therapist work with our son, we then tried to replicate that in our
Hmm.
own time. You know what I mean? Just
Yeah, yeah.
the transition from one activity to another, giving him that 10-minute warning, 5-minute warning, just to get him ready for the next thing that we were gonna do. But one key thing you said there, Charles, that really sticks with me is the family aspect of it, right? And Shamika, you were talking about when you first were, asking your family, or they were just giving you advice. Now, Maverick has this diagnosis. How is it now at family events when you come around with him?
Well, I'm not gonna lie. Some things I do not go to due to the fact that I know my son. He's gonna climb on things. He's going to jump on things. They're going to say, oh, why is he not sitting down? Why is he not staying still? Why not? And I tell them he's autistic. Oh, that's just a cover up. That's nothing. He's going to grow out of that. They don't understand that this is it. This is what it is. Yeah, he'll get better at other things. He's still young, but I have to really work with him. They don't, so I really don't, he's in this little box in my house. He goes to his father's house, and I will take him, you might know my coworker, Ebony. She's the one who invited me here. We'll take our sons somewhere, because she's autism mom, but people who have kids who are considered quote unquote normal, as they say, they don't understand the challenges that we see. Why you don't bring him out? Why you don't this? Half of the time I got to run after him. No one's helping me. So I have to try to keep him in a confined location. Despite my child, he's not an eloper, meaning he doesn't run away, but who knows, he might that one time. So I have to keep a close eye. My eyes have to be everywhere. But, I tend to, there's family members who never met my son. Wow. And he's going to be 5, because they feel like, oh, he'll get better. It takes time. He'll start talking. He might, but I have to be real with myself. He's almost 5. He might talk, he might not talk, but he's still my child if he talk or if he doesn't talk. Right. And that's what people don't understand, that he's still my child and I'm going to do the best that I can. And just because he doesn't talk doesn't mean he doesn't know how to communicate. And that's where people fail to negate. They feel that, okay, he doesn't talk. How you know what's going on? He communicates with me. He'll pull me. He'll point. There's cues that he'll let me know. So, it is still difficult day by day. His father will still say, oh, I've seen worse cases. And I have to explain to him, autism spectrum disorder is a spectrum. Mm-hmm. One day he could be on the low, one day he could be on the high. It moves. People don't tend to understand that. They think that it stays one thing and that's what it is. He cannot say anything today. He might say something tomorrow. I don't think people, especially people of color, we're not educating ourselves with what's going on. Caucasian people, they're getting all the services that are available to us, but we're being stubborn and we're not taking it. And I think that's where the problem lies. That's why there's a gap with our kids and the Caucasian kids. And I see it. I see it even with the services. Sometimes we have to go. My child go to Birch Family Services, but he has to go to another school when he's 5. But the services are in the Jewish community.
All the way across town. Yeah.
Where it's Caucasian, primarily Caucasian. They're not in East New York. There's no autism program in East New York, because guess what? They feel it's not a need because people are not getting their kids evaluated. They feel that their kid is going to be stigmatized. Your kid is already stigmatized. He's a little black boy growing up.
Charles, I see you want to jump in there, man. Go ahead, Charles.
Go ahead, Charles.
All right, listen, let me not to negate anything you're saying. You're being really authentic about it, which I have. It's something for which I have tremendous respect. And listen, we could tiptoe through the tulips and sugarcoat it if we want to, but the reality is, Miss Shemika's not wrong. Yeah. Now, with all that said, there's certain hacks that we need to be aware of. One of which is this: people in other communities are fully aware that even if your child is a preemie, they got services lined up before they even come out of the womb. Mm-hmm. It's a hack that people that look like us may not be aware of.
Right.
So, but this is why it's so important for people like Miss Shemika, people like you guys, people like myself, to try to advocate for these babies even before they're born.
Absolutely.
Because there is and this is another. I don't want to open up Pandora's box on another issue, but the reality is,
You're on the wrong show to try and keep it closed, man.
all right. So let me just say this. Let me put it this way.
Uh-huh.
Probably, and it's going to be related to our discussion, but probably the most poignant example of this kind of activity that we're talking about happened in Montgomery, Alabama. The Montgomery bus boycott. Why? Because we were faced with a problem and we were excluded from resources. Instead of, not to get too political, but instead of marching in the street, being angry, hating people, begging, trying to get people to love us, what did we do? We said, okay, you don't want us to ride the bus. Okay, fine. We don't want to ride the bus. We'll create our own system of transportation. We will operate in solidarity and self-reliance, and no one's behind it. No one's giving us money. No one else outside of our community is promoting it. So they don't have their hand in it. So they can't influence the outcome. And what happens? That demonstration of solidarity and self-reliance brought Montgomery, Alabama to its knees. And, one of my mentors, James Baldwin, so eloquently wrote, at the day that they had to accept the Black people back on the bus, he's like, all these people walking around like some kind of wounded lovers or something. So the point is, and bringing that historical dynamic back to our discussion, there is a tremendous need. It is a requirement for this level of solidarity and self-reliance in our communities around this issue and other issues, but around this issue especially, because this is an issue that is near and dear to all of us here on this show. So it is important that people like Miss Shemika be given a voice, which is why, as long as there are programs like yours, gentlemen, that will showcase this issue, there are opportunities for networking. There are opportunities for self-reliance. There are opportunities for solidarity on this issue. And this is what is sorely missing. And that right there, aside from all the clinical deficits that we don't know about and all these social hacks that we don't know about, that's one thing that is within our control to acquire.
So I think you're spot on, Charles. And in that solidarity lane, staying there, right? That means that more people that look like us on this call need to get involved, not only from a voting aspect, the advocacy aspect, but a clinical aspect as well, right? I mean, I know when I was first getting services for my son, there was only one Black person, I think, who came in, and we kind of lucked out getting her. So how can we make this field more appealing to our people to really stand in that solidarity so that we can make sure that this awareness, this education, and these services are there for these underrepresented communities?
Okay, let me be clear about your question. You're asking how we can make the field of cognitive therapy and autism, ABA, and applied behavioral analysis, and how we can make that more appealing.
Yeah,
For people that look like us to go into this field.
correct.
That's a very good question.
Yeah, because it's not a sexy topic, and as far as grabbing attention and making people go to where the information is, it's hard to. You don't want to twist their arm, but it's like it's here for you. But if you're not looking for them, you're not going to find them either. So how do you get that?
And the reality, yes, and the reality is, you mentioned, I am painfully aware that this is a subject, this is a field where there's not a lot of black folks, but there are even less black men in this field.
Mm-hmm.
So I remember one of my mentors when I was in undergrad, when I was doing my graduate work. He said, "Lo," he said, "Yo, if you get good at this, bro, you can make a lot of money." I said, I never thought about it. I thought he was just talking. I thought it was just like,
Mhm.
but the reality is, I got tired of working for other people, so I started my own practice. And unfortunately, I have to learn how to scale my practice because there are a lot of people I have to turn away because I'm just one person. You know what I mean?
Mhm.
So I'm in the process now of learning how to scale my business. But the reality is, not a lot of people. To your point, it's not. I like the way you put it. It's not a sexy topic. Um, and if you don't, and the entry level positions even less sexy because it's like you get pennies. It's pennies. People aren't really paid well to do this. And man, I got lucky. I started way. You know, I really have to count my blessings because I was a college dropout. I went to Morehouse College and dropped out in the '90s, and it took me 20 years to get back to Brooklyn College to get my bachelor's degree. So, and during that time, I took that opportunity to work with kids and discovered that and very quickly realized that I had a gift. So, and I hate to sound like whatever, but I'm really an anomaly because black men don't. A lot of black men don't do this. I know a few, but not a lot. So
Mhm.
I'm not really sure how to answer that question about how to make this field more appealing. I think that I think that from a practical point of view, it's not going to be the clinicians that are going to really turn the tide. It's going to be people like Miss Shamika that are going to turn
Exactly.
into advocates. It's not going to be clinicians.
Right.
It's not going to be clinicians because a lot of the clinicians don't look like me, and there's certainly not there's certainly a very small number of black men. So it's not going to be people like me. It's going to be people like Miss Shamika. It's going to be people like you guys that shine a light on this issue and the need for advocacy, self-reliance, and solidarity.
Yeah, and we need you too, Charles. we need you because
Definitely do.
that
Need you definitely.
after we do all of this advocacy and Shamika shares her story, you know what I mean, and Kenny has all of these great questions. Now comes all right. So who can we refer them to, right? And now we're talking about how do we talk about scaling? Like we know that this impacts everybody, right? There was a crew of people that did not know about autism, but they were Fat Joe fans. And the minute Fat Joe started talking about his son having autism,
Mm-hmm.
all of a sudden it
A lot of
became
awareness.
so what, Kenny? A sexy topic all of a sudden because it's Fat
Sexy.
Joe.
Mm-hmm.
That's
You know what I
crazy.
mean?
Like,
Now
the
I
right
can
person.
relate to. Yeah, I'm sorry. Go ahead, Kenny.
No, no, I was just gonna say when the right person says something out loud, everybody can relate to it all of a sudden. And now it's something to not run towards, but look into a little bit with a better eye. It's
Right.
unfortunate, but it's necessary.
Right, absolutely. But I appreciate your honesty, Charles. Man, that's exactly where I thought you would take it, and I'm so glad that you pointed that out. That we do need that advocacy. We do need more of our people to get into this field. Now, Shamik, I'm gonna take it back to you because I remember trying to find a daycare, trying to find a school, trying to find anybody to help me with this amazing, beautiful black boy and get him what he needed. Now, you can either start with just daycare or school. What was it like having him go through that process, if you did?
Well, he didn't go to daycare, so
Oh,
he received early intervention. That was a process because my son was born in 2019. COVID
mm,
happened in 2020.
okay.
So when he started receiving services, it was 2021. A lot of the service providers, they were still doing virtual. They wanted to evaluate my son virtually. They evaluated him virtually. I said, this is not going to work. He's not going to pay attention to the screen. This is not Coco Melon. This is not Puppy Dog Pals. He's not going to pay attention. He doesn't know you. So they had to come out. When they evaluated him, they gave him, I believe it was ABA and special instruction. It took me a little while to get speech because guess what? There's a need for speech. There's a need, you know, and in back of my mind, just to go off a little bit, I'm like, damn, I should have went to school for speech because there's a need.
Yep.
But you know, so it took, and at that time I lived in Staten Island. So Staten Island is a smaller borough, and the services that you got services easier than if you were in Brooklyn. So I did Staten Island. I was living there at the time. He finally got speech. When he got speech, it was 3 times a week, 30 minutes. I personally felt that wasn't enough, you know, because my son wasn't around kids. I was petrified to bring him outside because of COVID. People were still getting COVID, you know, even though it was open, but people were still getting sick. So then I noticed when I moved back to Brooklyn with my son, now he was still in an agency in Staten Island. Guess what? Now my services, now I got to do virtual because my service providers can't come out to Brooklyn. They can't cross boroughs. So now I got to deal with that. So guess who has to be the speech and special instruction? Me, Mommy Shemika, right? I got to do that. So I'm doing ABA online 6 hours, 3 hours on Saturday, 3 hours on Sunday. Okay. Now my son is he loves to jump. I have to sit him down. I'm like wrestling with him, even though he's young, they're very strong. I'm wrestling, I'm doing all these things. Now it's time to get a school. They're like, oh, get a good school. She's like, I feel he'll be good. So now I have to call the administrator. The administrator calls me and said, oh, you can't have a child living in 2 boroughs. I said, well, he lives with me. Well, why do I have his address in Staten Island? So there that goes. Well, I'm going to do you the favor because you are very persistent. So I will do you the favor this time, but his address, you have to change it to Brooklyn. So they did me the favor. So they did evaluation. Then they said, okay, we're recommending you to a school. There's going to be busing. I said, okay, busing. I said, you tell me my child never been with other kids is going to be a bus by himself. He doesn't know these people. He doesn't know anything. They're like, oh, yeah, he'll be fine. So I go to the school. My son, he surprised me. He went to the school. He hugged the teacher, but that wasn't his teacher, but it was a teacher like him. Someone he could relate to. My complexion, a little darker. Someone he could relate to. His father's darker skin. His grandmother's darker skin. So he could relate. So he's like, okay. And also he watches Gracie's Mansion with the little black girls with the pom-poms. So he could relate. So I said, you know what? I don't have to look at any other school. He's going to come to this school. They started telling me, oh, he has to. I felt very overwhelmed because they're like, oh, he doesn't have to be potty trained, but you have to start him wearing pull-ups. You got to make him drink from a sippy cup. Okay. He has to wear shoes with no laces, Velcro. I'm like, oh my God, I got to go buy all these things. Fine. The busing comes. Now I got to call the busing. The first day, guess what? The busing, school starts at 8:15. The bus comes at 8:10. So I said, okay, what's going on? I call the school. I said, look, y'all got to change the busing. My son only lives 11 minutes away. I'm off from work, but I have no one to take him to school.
Right.
So they said, okay, we're going to change the busing. Now another problem comes. This is my first time my son's in school. My son is sick every other week. So now guess what? I'm new at the job. I'm on probation. So now my job is in jeopardy, but I also got to take care of my child. So now I'm forced with a job and, you know, thank God his grandmother, his father's side was helping me, but she lives in Staten Island. I live in Brooklyn. Okay. So it's back and forth, back and forth. He can't come to school. He has a fever. Now I'm taking off. Now my probation might be extended. I'm like, oh my God. So now that's the problem. The job with a child who's autistic or a child who has a disability. You know, you're trying to do the best you can. But my son, then he only got, when he got to school, he got PT. Didn't know anything was physically wrong with him because he never got PT before. So they're telling me, well, he doesn't alternate his feet when he walks up the stairs. So now I got to deal with something else. So he gets PT and OT, no speech. My son didn't get speech for months. My address was still Staten Island, so I was writing to the congresswoman, but guess what? I wasn't getting a response because my address was Staten Island. I didn't live in the district. So they didn't look at me. Yep. So now I had to go. I called, I wrote letters to the state. Mind you, English is my first language. Imagine someone who English isn't. And I'm educated. So I had to write letters to the state. I said, this is unfair. I'm a working parent. I'm not getting services. And I did have to bring up, there's people who are not working who's getting all the services. I was very disgruntled because I'm paying taxes and someone's home collecting a check and they're getting all the services and my son is not. So I had to bring that up on the forefront as well. Finally, this year, he got all the services. Finally. Okay. And let me tell you something. They know me. They know Maverick's mom. They know who I am. You know, they call me. They know Maverick's mom, because I'm calling everybody. Yeah. Also, my son is on a 10-month IEP. You say my son is autistic. Why isn't he on a 12-month IEP? I had to fight for that. So my son, after June, you telling me, who do I have to watch him? I got no child care. So then I had to fight for them. The administrator went on jury duty, didn't let me know. So I had to call her boss in order for them so they could get him in a summer program last year. So it's a lot. But people, they don't see all the things that parents do. They just see, okay, he's autistic. I know it's a lot, but they don't know the day in and day out what I do. And I'm working full time and I'm trying to do other things as well. And I'm trying to make him get on the right track. You know, now I'm trying to get him into a kindergarten placement. They didn't tell me that, oh, you have to apply for a District 75 school first. You know, they didn't tell me that. So now my son is on like 20 wait lists. I don't know what school he's going to in September because no one guides you. They give you all this material, but you don't know what's going on. I don't know. Yeah, my son improved. My son's in an 8 to 1 to 1, but is he suitable to go in a 12 to 1 to 1? I don't think so. So guess what? He won't be going to that placement.
Right.
That's the thing. But people don't know that. Now you're going to throw my son in a 12 to 1 to 1 and he doesn't know how to thrive in a 12 to 1 to 1. So now he's going to get lost and he's going to go through the educational system. And that's what I'm an older parent. So I guess I know a little more because I had my son at 38. So I've been around the world, the block already. So I'm a little older, but these young parents, they don't know. They just go with the flow. Whatever these educators say, oh yeah, everything will be fine. No, I'm not going with that. Yeah. I know my son. I know what he's capable of. You tell me that, I'm seeing something different. So,
and I think, and I think that's important, right? So you said a lot of really good stuff, right? Just going back to some of the meetings, right? So you talked about ABA, so that's applied behavioral analysis for anyone out there. She talked about the IEP test, that's the individualized education program. It's pretty much just routine evaluations that they do with your kid to pretty much let you know how they're doing, right? And I think just from this conversation right here, people are probably going to learn more from what we're talking about in this, 44 minutes than they probably have from talking to people over the phone who are supposed to be governmental officials or educated officials that are supposed to be providing this information thoroughly. We've had to get it out the mud necessarily just for our kids to be able to survive it and have some sort of let's say plan for the future, right? Charles, I'm going to come back to you real quick, man, because I hear something in Shemika. I hear something in Ebony, and really shout out to Ebony for connecting all of us. Shout out to Carter. He is doing so amazing. And then I think of my wife back when my son was 1 and 2. If you could run into either Mayor Adams or Governor Kathy Hochul and say, Why aren't we just taking these parents who have to learn all of this stuff anyway, who have to turn into specialists anyway, and creating some sort of incentive program for them to become specialists in this work and get paid for it? Because
Mm.
Shamika's here talking about, I have to miss out on probation. I have to worry about childcare. I have to hope I can get a favor. They told her they did her a favor, and she's lucky because she was persistent. If you got the chance to stand in front of either Mayor Adams or Kathy Hochul tomorrow and pitch this, would you be an advocate for it?
Probably not, and I'll tell you why.
Okay.
Listen, again, you said I could keep it 100, right?
Absolutely.
All right. Yeah, we have no business relying on politicians. We have no business relying on politicians. Let me say that again. We have no business relying on politicians. I didn't bring it up. Miss Shemika brought it up, and I'm glad she did. But
You could bring him out.
there are politicians who are responsible for a dynamic that Miss Shemika brought to light. There are people here in the city that are getting literally thousands of dollars for nothing. Now, on the human part of it, I'm a human being. I am how can I put it? I am sensitive to people suffering from wherever they're from. And this is a country of immigrants and all of that. But it is politicians who have black folks in these in these cities that are in the same situation. And this is going to be whatever, but I'm just going to keep it a buck.
Mhm.
We're in the same situation that the white people during Reconstruction were in after the Emancipation Proclamation. Okay, so wait a minute. I'm supposed to share my resources with all these former slaves? No, I don't want to share my resources with these former slaves. What are you going to do with these people? I'm supposed to share my resources, my land, my education, my privilege, my leg up in society that I got from these people being slaves. I'm supposed to share that with everybody now? What are you going to do with all these hundreds of thousands of black folks that used to be slaves? You want to infringe upon my resources to address the needs of these people? And I just think it is a uniquely American paradox for the descendants of the emancipated slaves to now be faced with the same dynamic as the white people who enslaved them, because we now are concerned about being forced to share our resources or what should be at our disposal. I think it's a very interesting American dynamic. So I'm saying all that to say that we don't have any business relying on or looking to politicians, because the thing that we're dealing with right now, the authors of our condition right now with the so-called migrant crisis, the author of that dynamic is politicians. Back to my earlier point. Back to my earlier point about the fact that what is tremendously crucial is a need of recognition first and a strategy for solidarity and self-reliance, because politicians are not going to bail us out. Hochul and Eric Adams, they're not going to bail us out of this conundrum we find ourselves in as people of color when it comes to this issue of autism spectrum disorder. It's up to us. It's not up to politicians. So no, to answer your question, I would not pitch anything to Eric Adams or Catherine Hochul. It is my responsibility, and I see it as more of a prudent move, more of a strategic move, and a more of a prudent move to connect with and partner with people like Miss Shemika, people like you guys, who are shining a light on this issue and making it sexy. Make it, if not sexy, at least making it an issue that we can have the freedom and the courage to discuss.
We need
Now,
funding, man. We need funding, though.
I know that's not the answer you're looking for, but that's my own
No,
thing again.
no,
Spot on.
yeah, if it's your authentic answer, that's the answer. And to Kenny's point, so that's where the advocacy, the awareness, and hopefully platforms like this, to Kenny's point, can get the funding, because we know nothing really gets started or really gets amplified until there's a machine behind it, that supports the logistics behind it, and most importantly gets the word out, right? Marketing is everything. So yeah,
But
I mean, I appreciate the honesty.
Not to be at odds with you, but I have to push back a little bit on what you said, because my greatest example that I always go back to is the Montgomery bus boycott. White people weren't behind that. White people en masse were not behind that. But why did it change? Because they were so nice? Because they had a change of heart? Because they had a come to Jesus moment, not to offend anyone's religious sensibilities? No, none of that. That's not the reason that's not the reason that Black people got earned the right. Not notice I didn't say were given, earned the right to sit with a I'm sorry, can I say that word?
Yeah, you're good.
The right to sit where they wanted to sit. No one was behind that. No one was bankrolling it. No one was supporting it. We did that. Why? Because when we took ourselves out of the equation, somebody's money got messed with. Somebody's resources got messed with. So now we had no choice. They had no choice but to say, all right, let these Black folks sit where they want to on the bus. Because we can't afford to be what we were being when we told these people they had to sit in the back of the bus. So no, it's not about who's behind it, who's financing it. It's about the more powerful than, I don't know, so whatever rich person giving us money for the advocacy of children on the spectrum, more powerful, more potent than that, more potent than some celebrity saying a few words about it, more potent than any of that, is all of these moms. 1,000 Miss Shemikas will easily eclipse somebody's $1 billion being thrown at this issue, where they're trying to micromanage what we do with the $1 billion. With 1 million Miss Shemikas and with 1 million guys like you, no one's going to micromanage what we do and how we solve our own problem. I ain't mean to get all Malcolm X, but that's,
Oh, no. I think it kind of coincides with what we're going with here, but I think Shawn was trying to lean towards, and probably a combination of what you were saying, autism awareness to some extent might need a Rosa Parks moment where somebody does step up and put their foot down, like this isn't going to happen anymore, to gather the community to that aspect where enough eyes are on it. And if enough eyes are on it and then the money gets affected, then I don't know where funding usually pops up around that time to hopefully assist with the awareness at that point, maybe.
All right. I won't argue that point. That's a fair point. There needs to be a Rosa Parks moment for sure. I won't argue that point. That's a fair point. Okay. But what I would argue is that once that Rosa Parks moment takes place, we can't be looking to people outside of us to help us, because no one has a vested interest in helping us. It doesn't benefit anyone to help us. No one, it's not a this is a more crucial issue than people just being nice and calling themselves allies.
Like it might take more than just I'm sorry, go ahead.
But I got one thing to say though. It might be a little off a little bit, but as people of color, a lot of times we don't stick together. So that's another problem. We do not stick together. We're fighting. We're killing each other. And that's the problem. They rather go to the white man to get help than someone like me that looks like them. She don't know what she's talking about. She doesn't know this. She doesn't know that. So that's another problem we have. As people, we don't stick together. And I'm saying we're all divided now. I'm from Grenada. My parents are Grenadian. Oh, we don't like Haitians. We don't like Jamaicans. We don't like this. When is that going to stop so we can all come together to take care of our children? They don't see this is the next generation that's growing up. And if our children is messed up, what's going to happen? It's going to get worse and worse as the years go on. But people don't see that. They live for now. And that's where we got to start. We got to unite first as people. And once we unite, then we could take path into dealing with autism spectrum disorder.
Yeah. I think the generation is still shaking off the we can do it moment as well.
Yes.
We still rely on outsiders to get things done. Like,
yeah.
Arrested, not to go on a tangent, but if you get arrested and you have no money for a lawyer, public assistance is offered. If a white guy in a suit came versus a black guy in a suit came, you might be a little obligated to pick one. Not saying either one is wrong, but you want to go home tonight. You know what I mean? Like, and if you chose whatever you chose, I salute you, but I hope you go home that night. You know what I mean? Like, some people just make a choice where they feel they'll be in a better situation in front of a court. You know what I mean? Which is a terrible stigma. But I think the next generation, maybe not us, but the next one and the one after, once you start seeing people that look like you do those positions, they'll be more inclined to do so.
Yes.
Yeah, that's definitely the hope. That is definitely the hope. So I mean, this is a great conversation, Charles. Thank you so much for keeping us united, and Shemika keeping us honest with your story. If you had to give any advice to the parents out there, Shemika, what would you tell them?
I will tell them, don't give hope. There's people out there who can help you. You just have to get the resources. Just talk to someone. It is hard. I know it is. It feels like you're in by yourself, but there's a lot of parents out there. Who would ever think that Ebony will come start working with me? I never thought that. We started talking. Then we start talking, and other people say, oh, my kid is delayed. They start opening up. Oh, what do you think about this? So I think once people get to know their story and they get comfortable with someone, then they start giving resources and people of my color. That's the thing. We have so many kids out there that are delayed, not even only at ASD. There's other delays as well. So I think just keep hope, just keep calling. Sometimes you might not get an answer today. You'll get an answer tomorrow, the day after. I was calling every day to get answer for my son. 5 minutes, I'll step away. It's frustrating, but guess what? When I look at my son, I say, you know what? It has to be a better way. It has to be a better way. So, if you could put all that time in going to work for somebody else, you could put time in your child. And I tell people that all the time. You could put time in your child, even if it's 20 minutes. I don't have a lot of time for my son. I don't. I work most of the day. But before he go to sleep, I read to him 20 minutes. I've been reading to him since 1. He'll be 5. You understand? So every little bit helps. And I encourage parents, to get together. There are autism walks out there. It's next month. It's Autism Awareness Month. There's Black Autism Moms. There's several different pages, that you could look at. And, we'll meet again. I mean, I'm here right now. It takes a while to really realize, like, damn, before when I used to talk about autism, I used to cry because my son. But now I got the strength to be like, you know what? He's autistic, but he has very good traits about him. Very good things that he could do. He remember his password. He could take pictures. He could do a lot of things that maybe other kids can't do his age. So I look at the positive aspects. Now, if you want services, you have to look at all the negative things so you can get services, parents. If you want something positive, if you want to put your child in music or art, don't say he's autistic. Say, oh, my child's a good artist. Because so they don't look at the disability. And it took me a while to learn that. So stay strong.
That's awesome advice, Shemika. Now, see, Charles, I got a side question for you. Coming from the ABA side of things, like if a parent was worried or in denial, like what would be your approach? Okay, Shamika gave a really good sentiment as if the parent already knows what the situation is and how we're going to get out of it. Not get out of it, but get through it. On your side, seeing people for the first time, probably coming in an encounter or an interaction with someone looking to help. If they was worried or in denial, what would be your approach?
I always try to encourage families. Yeah, let me just keep it a stack. Mothers, because that's really
99.2% of it, yeah.
right, right.
No,
Killing me,
hey,
Charles.
Yeah,
you're strong
right.
point eight, bro. You're a strong
I was
point eight,
I
man.
was there. I was in the background in all the pictures. I swear, Charles,
No,
I was there.
I'm just saying, respect to you, bro. Respect to you, bro. Let's just keep it a buck. This is what we're dealing with, man. This is what we're dealing with. You
Keeping the
know what I
calm.
mean? I respect you, bro. I respect you, but this is what we're dealing with. All right, so I always try. At first, the first thing is I always just listen. I'm not trying to persuade anyone of anything right off, because a lot of times, probably as Miss Shamika will probably attest to this fact. Listen, this is your whole life. You don't have any time for yourself. You can't get your nails done. The least I could do is listen to you vent when I first meet you,
Mm.
Mhm.
right? The least I could do is listen to your frustration about what you can't do, how much sleep you're not getting, how much of a social life you don't have. The least I can do is listen to that. That's the first thing. The second thing is, after I've built rapport by just listening, not saying anything. Listen, I hear what you're saying. I understand. I really understand. I'm not in your position, but I know because I've been listening to the same type of thing for the last 30 years I've been doing this. But here's what I'm inviting you to do. I hear your frustration. You're frustrated now with your 2-year-old who's doing all of these things. I want you to put yourself in this same position 5 years from now. If you don't have the energy to deal with this now, do you think you'll have the energy to deal with this 5 years from now when they're 5 years older?
Mm.
Okay, all right. Think about that for a second. But let me ask you this. Now I want you to put yourself in this same situation a decade from now. Do you think you're going to have the energy and the physical, mental, and spiritual wherewithal to deal with this from your 13-year-old? Oh
Mm.
no, Mr. Charles, I go crazy. I go crazy. Okay, I hear you, and I believe you because you barely have the energy to deal with it now. Imagine dealing with a 13-year-old.
Mhm.
So with that, I'm inviting you to consider. I urge you to reconsider this idea about not wanting your kid labeled, um,
Mhm.
not all of these other impediments, not listening to your family telling you that they're going to grow out of it, overcome and break through the barrier of your embarrassment and your lack of comfort having your child outside. I know what it is. Listen,
Mhm.
listen, guys. I'm not being cavalier about how uncomfortable it is for for the mothers that I deal with, and the families that I deal with. I'm not cavalier about how uncomfortable it is for them to be on the bus, at the doctor's office, at Thanksgiving dinner when people listen. Miss Shamika said earlier, it's people in her family that haven't even met Matthew.
Mhm.
Come on, I'm not being cavalier about that. I get it. But put yourself in a position 10 years from now.
Mm.
How much worse is it going to be for you and the baby 10 years from now? So I urge you to reconsider this idea about not getting any services. I urge you. That's typically
I
my
like that.
strategy.
No, I think that's spot on. I definitely do. Just a couple more things to mention before we get up out of here. And for anyone who's listening, definitely You definitely want to look into your health benefits around services for your child. A lot of companies, when they pick your plans in the at the towards the end of the year, going into the beginning of the next coverage year, you want to make sure that they have developmental coverage. I'm pretty sure, Shamika, I don't know how NYPD works, but I'm assuming being a city worker, you have pretty much good coverage, right? I don't know how it
Yeah,
works.
yeah,
Right.
yeah.
Right.
Mhm.
There are some companies out there where developmental disorders, they don't cover them the way they should. So I'm just stressing to anybody like that, when you pick your coverage, you definitely want to call your benefits company or call your benefits department and just make sure that they have that coverage in there. And then also, back to Charles' point of advocacy, you definitely want to advocate for these insurance companies to reimburse for a lot of these procedures and a lot of these services that therapists like him provide. Because I have the unfortunate nature of getting a lot of these newsletter updates from these insurance companies who really don't like to pay for a lot of this. And it's really getting more and more concerning as we start to move through the years.
Can, can I
Mhm.
interject? I'm sorry, brother. I'm sorry. I didn't want to wreck the flow of what you were saying, but to my earlier point about early intervention, if you live in New York City,
Free.
yeah, you don't have to involve the insurance companies
Yep,
because it's
free.
early intervention. But you
Yep.
can't wait until the baby is 3 years old. You can't wait until the baby's 4 years old. You got to listen. If even if you have an inkling that there is some delay, go on Doc G, like you said earlier, and
Mhm.
look at the milestones.
Mhm.
If your baby is not meeting the milestones that Doc G is talking about, then don't listen. Error on the side of caution. Just go. Just make some phone calls. Ask
Yep.
while your baby's 1 year old, 2 years old. Let them tell you, oh, we can't diagnose right now. But insist. Listen, and like you have to have the energy and the persistence of a parent like Miss Shamika. You gotta
Dedication.
literally, you gotta literally call every day. And a lot of times, well, I don't know how many people use fax machines now, but I had this e-fax thing. I used to just press send all the time. If people wouldn't return my calls, I had to send, send, send. By the time that somebody's picking up those faxes, somebody's gonna call me today. So, you know, the only point I want to interject with is this: if you do it early enough, you don't even have to involve your insurance company. Just get early intervention. That is the tool. This has been statistically proven. This
Yep.
is this is based on observable, measurable, empirical evidence. Early intervention for ABA especially, it works. You get results.
Yep.
It is absolutely, it's science. It's behavioral science. There's no guesswork in it. If you children, it is a statistical fact that children who receive early intervention have exceedingly better outcomes than children who do not.
Yeah. But there are people who bring their kids in for other neurodivergent issues, and it does go to the insurance where they need to check their coverage. I totally get where you're coming from. Early
Yeah.
intervention has that part of it,
Right,
but
right,
this is where my field comes into play. We're talking about some of the newsletters that come from these insurance companies who do not want to pay for any of these services. So
right.
we're
And you're
both
not
saying the
wrong.
same thing from different angles. Yeah.
Absolutely. From a different
Okay.
perspective. Absolutely.
Right. All right. Absolutely. And just a couple things to throw out there. I mean, we've seen entertainment change completely, right? One show that me and my wife really love to watch, because when we first got our son first got diagnosed, it really gave us some sort of hope into the future, was Love on the Spectrum on Netflix.
Mhm.
It is such a it warms my heart to see that now even entertainment is starting to take a look at how diverse nature really is and how they need to bring awareness in the ways that most people turn to relaxation and look to unwind, and that's television. um Not to believe everything that you see on television, but I got to say it warms my heart. It's in season 2 now, so you can tell they're invested. Netflix, usually once they get season 1, they don't like it, they give up on you. But once I saw season 2 drop, I really love that show. So if you've never seen that, another really good show that was on Netflix was Atypical, and it brought the family dynamic of, to your point, Charles, right? When after it's 15, now you're talking 18 going into college. How are you going to interact with your kid if you are not getting yourself ready for those stages, staying in tight communication with them? And I think that was a really good show. And then on cable television, I think this was the first one that I actually caught my eye, and it's The Good Doctor. Granted, this is just a actor, but within my healthcare institution, there are jobs where there are pathway programs for people who are neurodivergent to actually get into any field. And they actually work with them through the entire process. Whereas I even got the pleasure of interviewing a student last year who didn't find out they were on the spectrum until they were 26. So it just shows you how broad of a, no pun intended, but spectrum it is, where sometimes it's not even something that's noticeable. Like you said, Shemika, it's literally something inside the person where they just feel disconnected from everybody. They like their isolation. They like their time to themselves. They focus on things a lot better. They don't like the distractions. So just really wanted to bring that extra point of view to this conversation on top of all the gems you both shared. It's been a great conversation with all of you.
It's been my pleasure.
Thank you.
We thank y'all so much.
I got a little heated, but
how do I get ABA with you, Charles? How do I get ABA with you? Or are you gonna scare? You're gonna scare.
Right up there.
You're gonna scare.
He said we're scaling right now. We're scaling right now.
Let's give Charles a single shot. Let's give him a single shot so people can see the full website.
Oh.
Yes, man.
Go in there and do get a little consultation, and then we'll see what we can do. Again, I'm currently working on scaling my business because people need help. People need help. I really people need help, and I really want to do what I can, even if it's just a conversation, even if it's a consultation for me to say, listen, call my friend Ebony, talk to my friend Ebony, right?
Yeah, we do that already. Yeah.
Right. I don't know what to do, Charles. Talk to my new friend, Miss Shemika Paul. She'll give you some guidance, even if it's just that.
Yeah.
Even if it's just me coming out for one session just to evaluate your child. Even if it's just, texting me sometimes, or on the platform on my website to just get some recommendations. My wife keeps saying to me, honey, you really need a YouTube channel to help people out.
You do, man.
Yeah. Again, that's part of the scaling up. So I gotta give my wife props because she did this whole background in like 2 minutes. Said, nice. Oh, you got this interview tonight? Here, do it. So I gotta give my wife props.
Shouts to the missus.
Definitely. Really excellent. All right. Oh, Shemika, if anybody wanted to get in touch with you, how could they do that?
Oh, they can go by email. My first name, SHEM as in Mary, IKA .Paul, P as in Peter, AUL at yahoo.com. I'm really good with my email, so you can always get in contact with me. Even though I'm busy, I'm always with the phone, and I barely sleep. I sleep around 10 to 12 hours Monday through Friday, and then I get sleep more during the week because my son, he has problems with sleeping. So that's also hard for me. Yeah.
Gotcha. All right. So y'all heard that 24/7 Shemika Paul at yahoo.com. Make sure y'all holler at her.
25 hours, 8 days a week. Getting it done.
Oh, Kenny, any last words, man? This was a great conversation.
Okay.
Just want to thank you guys for your time tonight. Super appreciative. A lot of good tidbits that I did not know, but as always, your time is appreciated. And we do thank you for all the gems that you dropped this evening.
Our pleasure indeed. Thank you, gentlemen.
All
And
right, our
please
pleasure. Have a good
keep
night.
doing what you're doing, guys. I appreciate what you're doing. Keep doing what
We
you're doing.
appreciate y'all.
Yes. You're
All right,
welcome.
so listen, everybody. We just want to thank our guests one more time, and we want to thank you for checking out this episode. We don't talk about autism enough, and as you can see here, we need to amplify the conversation. We need to support the conversation, support the services, and most of all, as my man Charles said, stand in solidarity. But it's that time for us to go. Charles got to wake up for work. Shamika's got to get back to her second job. You know what I mean? So you are now released back into your regularly scheduled programming. Corporate life, parental life, entrepreneurship, whatever it is that you do, we salute you. I'm Senor Lee.
And Captain.
See you back next pay week when we lock back in to a free state of mind.